Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. So the world received the expected but still sad news of the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. Morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. So what the global news right now is, it's sad, but then it was expected. After all, the grand old lady was 96. I'm talking about Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom passed yesterday. And as you know, she's been automatically and invisibly been succeeded by her son, 73-year-old Charles, who is now to be known as King Charles III. So there's a different system. Of course, if it was in Africa, there will be some time, but in the UK, that's not the way it works. It is automatic and it is seamless, it's invisible. So immediate, and a lot of people were a bit confused about that because they're talking about a coronation and that Charles is already being referred to as the king, even though a coronation hasn't taken place. Well, you know, the point is maybe it will come out a bit more by now. It doesn't work like that in the UK. It's automatic and invisible. It just happens. And so he's addressed now as her son, 73. When she came to the throne herself, you've heard it on our other programs that she wasn't really expecting to become the queen. That's not how it was scheduled. But then, following the abdication of her uncle, lines opened that hadn't been opened before. She is the second longest reigning monarch in history. She came to the throne, 25, 26? And she dedicated her life to it. And the royal family in the UK has sort of worked on presenting themselves as the ideal family. That was like their contribution, the ideal, what you could look to, for example, of the utmost impropriety. But that doesn't mean that they weren't hit. The family has been hit, as any modern unit will be, by all sorts of domestic issues, but through it all, it is felt that the Queen has maintained her poise, her dignity, and her contact, her very, very strong contact with the British people, not to talk of the Commonwealth, of which she was the head for such a long time. In fact, I don't know if I should be using the past tense. In the Commonwealth, she still has a significant role to play in it. We'll be speaking with somebody who also is very familiar with that, in the sense that he's been an ambassador before, former High Commissioner of Nigeria to Australia, a part of the Commonwealth. I'm talking about Ambassador Ayo Olukoni in due course. But let me keep my gunpowder dry. Good morning to you, Ambassador. I just saw a flash of you there, so let me seize the opportunity. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yori. It's nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation to join you in this conversation.
Indeed. Thank you very much, sir, for making the time for us, and we appreciate that you had to get up a bit early because you're calling us. We're receiving you from LA, and so you're in the wee hours of the night, so we really appreciate that you've taken that effort for us. Now, as I was saying, we have a package. Let's put together a package that's prepared by TVC News that went out before as sort of a backdrop for us to come and talk about this grand old lady that has passed on.
It was a Black Thursday as Queen Elizabeth II, UK's longest-serving monarch, died at Balmoral at the age of 96 after reigning for 70 years. Senior royals had gathered at a Scottish estate after concerns grew about her health early on Thursday. Born 21st April 1926 in Mayfair, London, she married Prince Philip in November 1947. And the stars spell out your name. The first son, Charles, was born in 1948, followed by Princess Anne in 1950, Prince Andrew in 1960, and Prince Edward in 1964. The Queen had 8 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. She became queen in 1952 and was crowned in 1953.
Footsteps will always fall here.
Queen Elizabeth appointed 15 prime ministers, including Liz Truss. She also met 14 presidents, excluding Lyndon Johnson. Queen Elizabeth reformed the monarchy for this less differential age, engaging with the public through walkabouts, royal visits, and attendance at public events. Her commitment to the Commonwealth was a constant. She visited every Commonwealth country at least once. She promised to devote her life to service. All the Queen's children traveled to Balmoral, near Aberdeen, after doctors placed the Queen under medical supervision.
Our nation's golden child.
Her son, King Charles III, said the death of his beloved mother was a moment of great sadness for him and his family, and that her loss would be deeply felt around the world.
The joy you brought us through the years.
He will lead the country in mourning as the new king and head of state for 14 Commonwealth realms. It is indeed the end of an era.
Never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along.
Okay, a nostalgic piece there. Queen Elizabeth II, Her Majesty the Queen, has passed on, beloved of many around the world. That is not to say that it was a universal situation. There are also those who are not, shall we say, royalists and think it's, let it be said, pretty much a waste of time that the world has become Republican. But a dearly loved lady, ceremonial head of the UK, very, very important, and of the Commonwealth. The Prime Minister, she opens Parliament in the UK. Well, all of that will now pass on to her successor, her first son, 73-year-old Prince Charles, who we can't call Prince Charles anymore, who now is being referred to as King George III. Ambassador, to you now. It's such a very rich tradition. Maybe not everybody knows that if you wanted to trace it, if you wanted to go into the history books, the monarchs in England, they're taking the relatively modern one as going back to Egbert, a Saxon king. You go back all that while in 827, and who reigned till 839. Then we're talking about 1,200 monarchs in the UK, right up till today where we are, and we have King Charles I. First of all, let's start off with, there's a sense in which you were within her ambit of influence as the High Commissioner in your time. High Commissioners used to present letters of credence, ambassadors, High Commissioners would present letters of credence to the Queen. Is that the case?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much again for the invitation, my Uncle Yori. The world, of course, has witnessed the exit of an icon, an iconic head of state, whose influence, of course, spanned the entire globe. And definitely she was a dignified person. And I think the words to which you spoke about in terms of somebody who came and agreed to do to give her entire life to service is an indication of the person who we're talking about today.
Indeed.
Let me give you.
I beg your pardon, Ambassador. I beg your pardon, Ambassador. I hasten to correct myself. I spoke about 1,200. Actually, that was a mistake on my part. It's 61 monarchs spanning 1,200 years, going back to the Saxon kings. But 61 monarchs, not 1,200 monarchs so far. Sorry for interrupting you, but I needed to correct that mistake on my part.
The tradition really goes way back in history. But let me give an example of the realm as far as the influence of the late Queen, of course, is concerned. I served as High Commissioner to Australia, and I also had concurrent accreditations to New Zealand, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Vanuatu, practically all Commonwealth countries. And one of the countries I had to present credentials to, of course, was Papua New Guinea. And in the process of preparing my papers, my letters of credence, somehow, I think the letter was prepared, an address to the Governor General. I mean, such occasional errors, do occur. And so my colleague, who happens to be the High Commissioner of Papua New Guinea, to Papua New Guinea in Australia, we were both in Canberra, called my attention and said, look, listen, the Queen is our head of state. And we don't present letters to the Governor General. And please, you have to go and reprint your letter. And of course, it has a particular way it has to be presented. The Queen and Iran, the Commonwealth, long diplomatic words. The long and short of what I'm saying is that far away in the Pacific region, here was a country that considered the Queen as the head of state. And then all papers, everything about presentation of credentials must be according to the tradition. And long story short, my letters of credence had to be re-prepared, and then it was only then that it was accepted, and as of course also presented to the Queen. This is an indication when you're talking about the question of the areas of influence, the realm, as far as the Queen itself is concerned. It used to be said that indeed the Commonwealth, the British Empire, was such that the sun never set on it.
Yes.
That means that the Queen, in her 70-year reign, of course, sat over, and you can say practically the entire world. I mean, this is just to say it briefly. This is the kind of influence the Queen wielded. As a personality, as a statesperson of the state, well, we will have statesmen, you can say this is a stateswoman of iconic status. Definitely, not only the fact that Britain has lost, the Great Britain has lost its head of state, the Queen, we can in a way say that, of course, also the world has lost a head of state, which, of course, we've not had we can say almost about a century.
Indeed.
This is what the entire international community is dealing with at this particular period. But, like they said, the king is dead, long live the king. Or if we say the Queen is dead, now we can say long live the king.
Indeed.
That means that they should pass on. And of course, we are entering a new era altogether.
Indeed.
As we go along, also, of course, we can also look at influence in the area of in the Commonwealth as well. But certainly, the world has lost an iconic statesperson.
Indeed. And well, as we were saying, she came to the throne very young. She was in her mid-20s when she came, and she didn't have a mentor before her. That is not the same situation with the present King of England. Yes, a coronation ceremony is yet to be performed, but he already is King George III. He has been mentored by his mother, right from birth. It was known that at some point he was going to take over the onerous duties of the monarch of the United Kingdom. So I wonder, do you expect, having served the tutelage under his mother and have observed and has taken part in a lot of those duties as part of the royal family, do you expect a significant difference now in the time of King Charles III, who ascends to the throne at the age of 73?
Well, I think the King Charles has come along. We prepared for this particular role. But don't let us forget, of course, he's been through a very traumatic period, a broken marriage, and of course, the crisis within the royal family itself. In aviation circuit, you talk about flying into a cat. A cat is a clear air turbulence. The royal family, of course, has been through the turbulence over a particular period. And with King Charles, of course, also King Charles also being part and parcel of it. I mean, we all know it's the marriage to Diana, what exactly happened, divorce. Which was never seen before, and then getting married to Camilla, as well, who is now going to be the Queen consort.
Yes.
All of this have been there. So the new king has had his own demons all along. And there was even also speculations that, look, listen, I think we should just skip it and let's have somebody who is a little bit clean. to step into this particular role.
Indeed.
But like they said, a lot of water has passed under the bridge.
Indeed.
Here we are. We have a new personality in terms of the king himself, and we'll see how it goes. But I think he's been prepared for this particular role. Perhaps one way or the other, his own subject will forgive him. Okay, let all those who do not have any sin raise up their hands. Let's live with it.
Indeed.
But I think it's been very prepared. I think it's been prepared for this role.
Indeed.
And if you see that a lot of times she even had to represent the mother in several places. I remember that indeed, even some of the Chogom's meeting, one way or the other, he comes into play one role or the other. So he's very much familiar with it. And he's also carved a niche for himself in a few areas. And one of the areas which I'm very much familiar with, which I've also had cause to, of course, interact with him one way or the other, is in the area of the environment.
That's right.
Environmental
That's right.
issues, climate change, and the various thematic areas of the environment. He is very, very much passionate about the works of the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, and then, of course, the question of charities. And I think I remember that he had even visited Nigeria on a few occasions in connection with one charity program, education, and other things like that. Mm-hmm. So he is well prepared as far as this is concerned. And in terms of the international diplomatic and international affairs and issues of international affairs, I think he's on good ground in this particular area. So we are entering a new era with a new king, and we wait to see how it goes. But definitely, I'm sure that he's been well prepared for it. And of course, with the new areas, he's choosing a very important area as far as the environment itself is concerned. And I think I will not be surprised if he's going to play a key role. I will sincerely look forward to what can be done.
You're very right, Ambassador. I fully expect that King Charles will continue this passion of his for the environment. He spent a lot of time there. It is well publicized. He travels the world. He's a great defender of nature, a great defender of the forests around the world, that kind of thing. And speaking about the situation you spoke about, Camilla, it's interesting. I think the Queen sort of came to terms with it because in her 2022 Platinum Jubilee statement, she actually said, and I quote the words, that the Queen, it was her, quote, sincere wish, unquote, that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort on her death, and that ended almost 2 decades of uncertainty as to how was the Queen feeling about this. So in that statement last year, she sort of lifted everything and said that it is her sincere wish that Camilla will be known as the Queen Consort.
I think that shows how gracious the Queen is, and we say that the wisdom which God has given her in terms of look, listen. This tradition is a long tradition. I don't think we should rock the boat. Mm-hmm. While we as humans do not want this kind of thing, we don't want to stay in the long years of tradition, thousands which you have mentioned about. Let's see how we can find. I think it was very gracious on the part of the Queen.
Indeed.
Itself, because left to a lot of people, it was look, listen, no. This should not happen.
Exactly.
And I think it's a reflection of how diplomatic she also is in terms of what she's been through and her ability to be able to apply some element of diplomacy into every situation which she finds herself over the years. 70 years, I think she's acquired a lot of experience.
Indeed.
And that was what we saw reflected in that particular statement which you made mention of.
Mm-hmm. And, the grand old lady, as I said earlier, the royal family in the UK has modeled themselves, at least tried to model themselves along the lines of an ideal family that still needs to be humble, needs to be in touch. I was listening to the royal correspondent of the BBC yesterday, and he was saying that the Queen never failed to be humbled by the adoration that her people gave her. She never took it for granted, and that's why she made the statement, I think, more than once, that her life was going to be, her life, be it long, be it short, was going to be dedicated to the service of the people of her realm.
She's truly adored. She's truly adored. I remember, like I was making reference to Chogom 2011 Perth. when I was High Commissioner to Australia. And ahead of our visit at that particular period, the Australians too themselves, just like very many Commonwealth countries, are discussing whether we should go Republican. Can we be far away across the ocean? And then the Queen is the head of state. No, let us be modern and let's end all of this. The debate is always out there as far as some countries are concerned. It happens in Australia. I'm very much aware of even Canada too as well. And I think ahead of our visit, there were demonstrations, here and there, even in Australia, in Perth at that particular period, that no, let us end this. But the way, the adoration and the respect and the dignity, because I think there's an aura about her, either we like it or not. Each time before she comes, there's a lot of the opposition. But by the time she comes, one way or the other, there's a calmness about the entire thing. And when people see her, I mean, you can see that she is admired. And definitely as a person, as a personality, maybe the long years and the way because she's been through very, very difficult period.
Indeed,
Don't forget that it was just something at the end of the Second World War, and there she was, this young queen, sitting over a place that in the UK, in Great Britain itself, and then seeing it through, and then the various crises. And if you fast forward and look at what even happened during the global pandemic too as well, there's always this calming effect about her and the way she handles things, despite the opposition amount. Recently, I think it's Barbados that, of course, stepped out and said, look, listen, thank you, Queen. We've had enough. We want to be a Republican as well. But if you watch today's members, high-ranking personalities in Barbados, who recently, of course, like I said, ended the reign of the Queen as head of state, of course, while still speaking, glowingly about the Queen and the role she played in that particular era, at this particular period. So this is the kind of person who, somebody I was discussing with that one of these days, I think people like her are created, by the Almighty God on the 8th day after God had rested. It took time to really create her and give her a lot of praise.
Indeed. What are your personal thoughts, Ambassador, about this whole conversation, shall I not call it a debate immediately, this conversation about getting rid of the monarchy? And of course, there are also those who are royalists and who say, look, when you look at it, 61 monarchs, 1,002 years of the history of that monarchy is not beans. We're not going to get rid of that. It does something for us. The Queen, maybe because she's a woman as well, there's also the maternal aspect to it. And you know how people love, adore, are devoted to women. And she reciprocated. There was a sense in which she was the mother, as it were, of the nation. So I wonder what you personally feel about the arguments now as to whether the monarchy should continue in the UK or indeed we should just be Republican. Do you have any personal thoughts, Ambassador, or would it be undiplomatic to voice one?
What? No, well, my personal opinion is that most likely for the foreseeable future, the monarchy will continue in the UK.
Okay.
For the foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. Don't forget, next door to the UK, you know what happened in the 1789, the French Revolution, in which the entire monarchy was brought down, the king was beheaded, and that's just next door. The question you ask is, why and how did Great Britain, escape that ordinary revolution? There must be something about it, because in terms of the question of, bringing about stability, the whole question of as the human race, as the people, each country, there is always the question and issues of having somebody, a symbol, in which that can serve as a rallying point. This is one of the key issues. If you come back home to our own situation, I mean, look at the whole question of our traditional rulers. I know, there used to be House of Chiefs in those days, and I think it was scrapped because it was seen that, look, listen, as far as the Declaration of Human Rights is concerned, every person has the right to rule. And then, of course, it was scrapped. But somehow, our respective traditional rulers still remains a reference point for us.
Indeed.
They're respected, they are anchors in the midst of difficult period. Now we're talking about the whole question and crisis of security in our country, and people are saying, look, listen, I think we should bring in our traditional rulers to see how they can be of help in terms of stabilizing and also ensuring security.
All right, Ambassador. One second, please.
This is the experience.
Okay. One second, Ambassador. We will have to take a quick break now, but please stay with us because when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the UK, and who has now been succeeded immediately, without any ceremony, by her son, King Charles III. Stay with us, please.